Hello, my name is Amanda Fennell, and I am the Chief Security Officer and Chief Information Officer at Relativity. We're a legal tech and compliance company. It's based out of Chicago. And I wanted to talk today about time to shake up the work-life balance, this term, this idea that has been so prevalent for the last year or so for all of us. What I'm going to do to cover this is actually how we got here. Where did this even come from? The relationship between stress and success, and then redefining work and life and what that looks like. Lastly, I always attend things and wonder, what does that mean? That sounds great, but I'd like to know as I sign off for this laptop for the day, what am I supposed to do that's tactical advice that I'm supposed to be doing with this information? So I hope to help you with some of that as you end this today. Now, this particular picture is pretty provocative. A lot of us could identify this is a picture from the women's liberation movement. Originally, the term work-life balance first appeared in the UK in the 80s. It was kind of like a plank in the women's liberation movement. So it was a movement that was advocating for flexible schedules, maternity leave for women, things that we absolutely think are table stakes today. And men were socially unencumbered to pursue their career goals without worrying about housekeeping, family raising. Women, all of these things expected, but you also had to work and maintain that responsibility for potentially caregiving or family rearing. So this was when it started to become really top of mind that we're doing more than people might realize, and we needed some space for that. And it became very difficult to juggle work and life. It's an interesting thing that it led to so much stress. You know, the more that we try to juggle, the more stress there is. But what is the word stress? The definition of this one is the state of mental or emotional strain or tension that's resulting from adverse or demanding circumstances. Well, that really epitomized what a lot of these people in this picture are feeling in their frustration, right? This is workplace stress that makes up a significant part of our general mental health crisis that we're trying to overcome. So work-life balance started in the 80s that we started using this terminology. Now, the current work-life model, it doesn't work. So unfortunately, the movement led to some unfortunate consequences for today's workforce, particularly among women. It's kind of a backlash there. So according to Reich's United States stress statistics from 2019, 94% of workers reported stress at work, and this was before we brought work home in COVID. Reich's also says that 54% of workers say that workplace stress impacts their home life in a negative way. Again, this is 2019, not 2020. According to the APA, American Psychological Association, the gender gap seems to be present when it comes to this stress too. So the APA had advised in a 2016 survey, on a scale of 1 to 10, women described their stress levels at 5.1 compared to the more common stress levels of 4.4 among men. So we've seen a little bit of a gap there. Now here's where things get a little bit spicy. So the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, they found that 2.5 million women left the job market since the beginning of the pandemic. That's compared to 1.8 million men. And as they take on more responsibilities of homeschooling, everyday parenting, and that caregiving. So what do we do when this burden of responsibility and this ongoing equality of the sexes has this challenge for juggling work and this caregiving? It's not just 8 hours a day anymore. This has entered our home. It's part of every day, all day for us. What do we do? So at this point, I'll pause for a sec. No statistics on this one. This is just going to be a little bit of a narration here. This is some moments that were very watershed for me. If we have an Oprah book, of the month, this will be my part of the chapters here. I was following the same path: work, life, balance, struggle, couldn't have enough hours in the day, work bled over into my personal life in order for me to feel like I could be successful. But there's a few things that really I remember clearly and vividly when I look back that made me realize that I was in the same place as so many other women had been before me. The first one, I fell in love with somebody and they had to go to residency for medical school for residency in Arizona. And I lived in Washington, D.C. And I said, okay, well, can I work remote? And my boss said, it's so crazy. I was a government contractor. And he said, it's so crazy. you were one of the ones I really thought was going to go really far, really fast, but your career is going to stall if you're remote and working in Arizona. And I was like, okay, well, why is that? So, well, they have to see you in the office. I mean, you have to be in the office and you have to show that you're working hard and you're dedicated. And I was like, I will. I don't need to be in front of everyone to show that I'm working hard and dedicated. That's who I am naturally. But he was right. My career stalled for a little while. And maybe that was the culture of where I was and the company. But it was a real defining moment of realizing that I wasn't able to have it both. I could either be really focused on my career or I could choose to be in love with someone and be with them. So flash forward a few years later, things happen. It's not all white picket fence, but yes, we got married and we had kids. And I remember being in labor with twins, and I was in the delivery room, and I was so stressed out because there was something going on at work. And I was so concerned that at work, I was not going to be showing, that I was really committed, even though I was in labor. And so I was stressed out about it. I had a laptop on my belly while I was in the delivery room. And at one point, the doctors came in and said, you have to turn this off. Like, you can't be giving birth to 2 children and doing this at the same time. And you need to turn off the work thing. And I felt like I couldn't. It was really difficult for me because it was where I got my validation. It was where I felt like I was showing my best self and who I was. And I knew I was good at it. And I wanted that feeling like that, validation again. So this was a moment I realized, like, hey, I might not be a great mom if I continue this way. I know that I grew up in a household with a single mom, and she worked a lot of hours and she was never around. She worked 3rd shift. And I know that she chose work over her family many, many times. And so I started to really rethink what was going on. And in retrospect, I heard a comment from a coworker that I used to work with back then had made this comment to someone that I was never really the same after kids, that my work quality just never really was as good anymore. And what's interesting about that is I never really worked with that guy. He never saw any of my work quality or any of the forensic reports that I wrote for investigations. He had nothing to do with my area of work. We were very separated. So it was really just this mythos that gets propagated whenever somebody leaves for maternity, paternity, so on, that they're just not as sharp and they're not as present. It was pretty frustrating. So then we flash forward a few more years where I had put my family in front of my career. So I've spent a few years in my 20s, really, focused all the way up until, I want to say maybe 28, 29, maybe 30. I was super focused on making sure that my career was really shooting and taking off as much as I could and stressing out about it. Then I started to have kids and I started to put my family forward with my husband and my children and my siblings. I'm really close with my sisters, and that takes a lot of effort too. And so my work went down, right? So supposedly, according to somebody, my work wasn't really, I wasn't getting promoted. I wasn't moving forward in my career. So a moment came that somebody who I'd been working with over the years reached out to me and said, I'd like you to work for us. And I said, well, I can't move to Zurich. I can't move to Chicago to work for Zurich there. And they said, yeah, that's fine. We don't need you to. I said, okay, sounds good. You don't need me to, but I'm really busy. I've got my 3 kids now, and I'm really focused on that. And I really want to be great at my job. And he said, I think you can be both. And so I was stressed about taking this job, and especially the one I have now at Relativity, which I knew was going to be so much time and effort and work hours that I was going to be doing this. And I said to myself, I don't know what to do here. And my husband's, not to be cliche, but he is a really good partner. And he said, well, what if you did both really well? What if you showed that you could do both at the same time? And I stopped separating everything in my world as either work or children. What would happen and what would that look like? So there was a day. I look back at this day and I thought this to myself and said, what if I stopped trying to separate them and I effectively balanced the two? If I redefine what the term success looks like, and for me, I decided to just throw myself in headfirst, arms akimbo, like, let's do this headfirst. I'm going to go for it. And I accepted that work and home aren't separated with a slash. And that instead of work-life balance, it's just life. And I put the two together. All right. So let's go back then to what we were talking about and all the stress that we get from life and all the things that are taking place. All right, so let's look at this. The human body, I'm gonna get a little scientific for a minute here. They can do amazing things. You choose what we do most often. You choose your work performance, you choose your career, you choose to stay at a job or with a boss. How does a smoker stop smoking? It's a choice. It's a flip of a switch. And employees can often hide behind their own inaction and say, it is what it is. This is just my life. This is just where I'm at. No, COVID taught a lot of people we can choose to go somewhere else. We can choose to do something else. We control more than we actually think we do in our mind, in our body, and through our actions. So gaining alignment between body and mind can lead to some incredible results. In my own experience, I actually remember being advised when I was in Krav Maga in training that when I hit something to use my voice, because there was 30% more power to the impact. And this is a proven fact. If I'm going to hit, if I hit someone with this sound, this is just like, okay, I hit you. But if I hit and that is why people make those sounds when they're making a hit, because it actually has shown that the effect is more power behind it. So our voice has power. It has more of an effect than we realize. Buddhist monks, got to have a picture here. There's actually a whole bunch of nuns as well. So we've got some here. And during visits to remote monasteries in the 1980s, Herbert Benson, who was a researcher from Harvard, and his team was studying these monks and nuns that were living in the Himalayan mountains, who could, by Jintunmo meditation, raise the temperature of their fingers and toes as much as 17 degrees. So it has yet to be determined how the monks are able to generate this type of heat, by the way, but it is a thing that they knew that they did, and they did it on purpose. And a bit closer to home for those of us in the US, basketball phenom Steph Curry, through conditioning and breathing techniques like the above that we were just talking about here, Curry can actually coax his heart rate below 80 during a 90-second timeout. So we know what stress is, we know what work-life balance is and what this came from and why we use this term. We know that we all have our moments that we have to decide something about work and life, but we also know that we can control more than we think we can. So the work from home reset. Why do I bring all these things up? Well, let's loop it all together. Because we control so much. We do have the ability to make that switch and decide no more cigarettes today. I say no more work-life balance drama. During COVID, we proved that we can thrive in difficult situations. Many companies were positive they could not work remote, and we're never going to do this. And employees were not working hard unless they were in the office. We showed that we can be productive at work while balancing household chores, playing with our kids, connecting with loved ones, dealing with our pets, all of these things. And for many of us, this was actually a time that we took to reflect and reprioritize. And I say, why choose one over the other? We can do everything we want in life and in work on our time, at our pace. We need one word in our life, and that is grace. Accept that your work and your life selves are partnered into making you the amazing person that you are. If you have a hard time on the daily for self-validation or sense of self, like I did, and I felt like I wasn't contributing, you have to reevaluate. What does contributing look like? Do you need to feel a part of something? Most humans do. But what is that something? And what are you setting a standard for your loved ones? Not just for my children, which would be an easy out to say, I want to show a strong female executive in tech for my daughter to see that. I want more than that, actually. I want them to think it's the norm, and I want them to also see me enjoying my work and know that work is not just toil, but it is what we do as humans to feel like we've contributed to something bigger. So right now, you've listened to me for the last 14 minutes and 15 seconds, and you're thinking, okay, this sounds good. I wish I could, but how? How do you get buy-in from yourself, your peers, your colleagues, and superiors about this concept of removing the slash from work and life? You have to be a beacon. Now is the opportunity as we go back to this office. Many of us are planning in September, if you haven't already gone back. Do you want to course correct or create your own path? Do we want to continue this futile pursuit of trying to balance the work and life as two different sections of life, which is oil and water? Or do we want to accept that our personal and professional lives are intertwined, and that's okay? You have to be a beacon for this work-life acceptance and grace. 3 things you can do. First one, meeting culture. 5 to 10-minute gaps in meetings for breaks. This is helpful for mental breaks as well, but also just to return a call for a doctor's appointment or to grab some water and so on. So establishing that your meetings that you're hosting and or that you would have to attend for your team, can we please have a 5 or 10-minute gap? 5 minutes for 25-minute meetings, then 5-minute gap. So 30-minute meetings become 25, and 10-minute gaps for ones that are 50 minutes long. The human brain does need some space and time to reset as we are doing this quick context shifting back to forth, back to forth. Second, scheduling. So being cognizant of the people that you work with are on different time zones, different geographies. Start the request and acknowledge that audio only will work for this particular meeting since it's early and it could be a difficult time for that person to be engaged in the call on video. Letting people be on camera when they do things like make dinner for their family on a call, which I'm just about to do on a call for work, actually. So normalizing that your schedule, being aware of the people who are in attendance, that they might be on these different time zones, different schedules, and that you should acknowledge that and give space and acknowledge and say, hey, maybe a bad time, but treat them as human beings as opposed to you are employee number so-and-so and need to do this work and I need you at this meeting. Let's treat people like humans. And the last thing is that word normalizing. Normalize the blend. Set the standard by not hiding your personal obligations. I have a cat next to me on this chair. I have a dog on the floor. I have 3 kids who are over here. You probably heard listening because they were eating cereal over here this whole time. These are all things that can come into frame, and we should acknowledge them and treat them as they're organic, as opposed to trying to hide them or shush them away. And making them, feel almost like quiet mommy's on the phone. No, mommy's working and you're welcome to ask a question if you need something. My personal favorite is my children have started to write notes and pass them to me like we're in study hall. So, but I think there's a normalization that needs to take place there and make it part of what makes you authentically yourself. So embrace this. This all sounds very, very happy. And I know that right now it can be very invigorating for you to hear all of this. And I would hope that it would inspire you to think twice about the way you've been approaching work and life balance. And I hope to leave you with something just to remember as you're going through and trying to establish one of those 3 different opportunities that we have. Favorite author for quite some time is Edith Wharton. There are 2 ways of spreading light: to be the candle or the mirror that reflects it. I hope that each of you decides to be someone who spreads light and who walks away today and decides to put some grace into the way that you work, but also to really be a beacon for other people. Thank you so much. And I will be happy to take any questions or comments and reach out. Thank you for having me.